Well, hello there, everybody. It's good to meet you all. I'm just looking around. Are there going to be any familiar faces? I don't know that there are. So it's good to meet you all, and I'm very happy to be here this evening. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a moment to get set up. Make sure I have the right thing shared. Rearrange it a little bit so I can see everybody. All right, good. So hopefully you see on your screen a slide entitled "The Thing from the Future." Now, this is a game that we're all going to be playing this evening, and I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction. I'll introduce myself a little bit, what led to this game, and then we'll play a couple rounds. We'll see how time goes. So my name is Nic Richmond. I work at Pima College. By background, I'm an earth and planetary physicist. My training is all in geophysics from institutions back in the UK. But around about 12 years ago, actually 14 years ago, time flies, I meandered out of academic research and found myself working at Pima in the research team. And currently my role is Chief Strategy Officer, and I lead the college's strategy, analytics, and research functions. As part of that, there are two key things that relate to why I'm kind of joining with you and chatting with you today. The first, I was the lead for the development of Pima's first climate action and sustainability plan. I lost the chat when I shared my screen, but when I have the chat back, I'll drop the link in. So if any of you would like to take a look at the plan, you have access to it there. This is how I met Stuart. He and I worked together on the plan. He provided some really valuable input. So I don't think he's here still, but my thanks to Stuart for engaging with Pima and his work supporting the planning process that we went through. In addition to the climate work, I also lead the overall integrated planning structure at the college. So this includes the strategic plan, the long-range education plan, the facilities plan, all that kind of stuff flows through my office. And as part of that planning work, we use a number of different things called foresight methods. These are also called futures methods. It's straight out of a futurist toolkit, the kind of methods that we use. And I'm here today to talk about kind of an overlap between the climate work we do and the foresight methods we use. When it comes to thinking about the future, there are lots and lots of different methods that we can use. Some of them come from kind of traditional planning. So the classic strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis that some of you may have done at wherever you work, things like that. The limitation with a lot of the traditional methods is they're often more focused at looking at what happened in the past and using that to think about what's going to happen in the future. Now, there are times when that can be a really good way to go. And certainly these methods still have a lot of value, but the pace of change in today's world is really, really high. It used to be people would make a strategic plan and it would be good for like 4 or 5 years, especially in education. And these days that just doesn't work. Everything is moving too quickly. So this kind of forces the adoption of different kinds of methods to think about the future and think about how the world is going to evolve. And this is where these foresight methods come in. So there's lots of different groups that have lots of different methods. For Pima, we primarily use the methods from the Institute for the Future, which is based in California. Very interesting group. They have this toolkit for foresight practices. Though interestingly, while we use those the most, it's not one of their tools we're actually going to be talking about and trying out today. As a college, we've been thinking about 10 years as our timeline, 2030. We've had a lot of conversations about that over the last few years. We're starting to take a longer-term view now, though, thinking 2040, we're thinking 2050. Sometimes we'll have conversations looking even further out. Of course, the rationale being that you can't make the right decisions today if you don't have a sense of what the future looks like that you're heading towards. You've got to have that future picture to make the right decisions today. So the methods, futures methods, are all really varied. It is not our job today to talk in detail about the suite of different methods that are out there. There's a few notes here about some of the factors that are built in, but for us, we're going to apply one method, one game to specifically the topic of climate action and sustainability. Futures games are really common. It is extremely hard to think about the future. If I came here today and said, okay, we're going to talk about the future, I'll put you in focus groups, think about what you think the world will be like 10 years from now. It's really, really hard to do that. As a species, it's actually down to how our brains are wired. We kind of live in the present. We're not good at thinking about ourselves in the future. There's different ways you can try and tackle that. And there's a bunch of methods I use in some of the workshops at Pima. But games can really help push people kind of out of their regular way of thinking. They present prompts and challenges of combinations of things you may have never given any consideration to before, but they can really help generate creative thinking, different kind of ideas, new ways of linking topics and thinking about things. And the game we're going to play today to tackle this is called The Thing from the Future, which always sounds to me like it needs dramatic theme music every time I say it. I haven't gone so far as to think what that music is yet, but one of these days I'm going to pick a theme for this game. So this is a card game that comes from an organization called the Situation Lab. If you ever fancy looking at futures discussion and ideas, the Situation Lab, their website is on this slide here. It was a really fun one to go look at. This particular game is available to them. You can purchase it sometimes as a hard copy card game, but it's available for free as a download. So they give permission for anybody to go and use this game, and that's why it's fine for us to be here using it today. Now, I've used this game in a number of different settings, and what I've done over the years is customize this for some different situations. So we have an education version that we use to support strategic planning at the college. It's a really fun warm-up activity. We'll sometimes play a hand or two of this at the start of a strategic planning meeting, just to get the creative juices flowing for the members of those groups. But most recently, in the last few months, I've expanded this to create a climate action and sustainability version to support conversations at the college and here with all of you today to just think through different possible futures, what that might mean. Now, I should note at this point, oftentimes when you talk about futures work, people think, oh, you're trying to predict the future. And that's really not it. Predicting the future is impossible. There's all these different variables. You're never going to get it right. But what it's about is thinking through a range of possible futures. Because, of course, the actions we take determine where we're going to get to down the road. So you think about the possibilities, the options, and then start making decisions that will lead you to what seems like it's going to be the ideal future, the best route forward, to the degree that that can be determined. So to give you a little quote from the Situation Lab, this is how they describe their game. So the object of the game is to come up with the most entertaining and thought-provoking descriptions of hypothetical objects from different near, medium, and long-term futures. Any kind of futures work, the items that come out, it should be provocative, it should be startling. Sometimes they can be extremely funny. There's no rule about the nature of what the object needs to be. And the objects can look really different for the same set of prompts discussed by different groups of people. So just as an example, on this slide, you have a proposed building. I don't think this is going ahead now, but it's a dynamic tower, which was discussed for possible construction in Dubai. You see how it's got this interesting like swirl pattern to it? This building was designed with the intent that it would be powered fully by solar and wind power. And each of the floors in the building can rotate independently of the other floors in the building. It's a very, very interesting structure. It's intended to generate enough energy that it can provide the power for like 3 or 4 equivalent sized buildings. And this is a pretty big building. Now, it hasn't been built. I don't think it's moving forward, but this is one idea of a possible future building, trying to build in sustainability practices. This slide includes a different possible future building, except in this case, it's actually one that's been built. This is called the Vertical Forest in Milan. And this was designed with the philosophy that it's a home for trees, but it's also inhabited by humans and birds. So they had trees at the forefront of the construction and designed for this. And these give you kind of two ideas of a possible building, I would say, from the future. We can think for the vertical forest how that would develop further in the future. But this collaborative game is intended to challenge the people playing it, to think of kind of like a range of different alternative futures and just think very creatively about the different topics that are presented. And of course, as the name suggests, for us, we're focusing specifically on things from the future that have a climate association. So we'll play in small groups. Given the number of people we have here, I think we'll go into 2 groups, maybe 3. I'll see what I decide as I put you in breakout rooms. I will provide you with a set of cards. I'll describe the cards next, so you know what kind of thing you're going to be seeing. I'll also show you an example before we go into the groups. And the cards will give you the pieces of information that you'll use to create or think about a possible object from this hypothetical future. And when you think about the object in this game, or the thing that you're making, it's kind of like an artifact from the future. So, you know, when we study history, we look to artifacts from the past. I have an example here from the Amarna period of ancient Egypt, which is a topic I am completely fascinated with. But these artifacts from the Amarna period tell us a lot today about what life was like and what was important then. And in the same way, the things developed through this game give us a little bit of an insight into these possible futures. So there are 5 cards that you'll get for each of the game. And you'll see the cards here. I'll be sharing my screen. When you're in breakout rooms, the first thing I'll do is send a broadcast which lists the cards. So you'll have them written down for reference while you're in the breakout rooms. And as noted here, the thing you identify in your groups ideally needs to take all the cards into account. Now, this is a random game. So you get a random card from 5 different lists. So just occasionally the cards will be completely contradictory to each other. And if that's the case, it's fine to leave a card out because it won't necessarily all go together in a way that makes sense. So feel free to omit a card or 2 if the things just don't go together. And sometimes they really don't. And if it's really far off, I'll pick a different selection. So there are 5 cards. This first slide describes 4 of them. These are the traditional cards from the regular thing from the future game. And it looks like a lot, but it's relatively straightforward. And when you see the cards, it will kind of start to make a little bit more sense. So the first card is the arc card. This is kind of, you can think of this as the general kind of big picture plot of a book. Is it a mystery novel? Is it a romance novel? Futurists tend to think in terms of 4 different types of future, big picture types. So one is growth. A growth future is where things just continue kind of how they have been. There's growth in population, there's growth in different metrics. It's just a steady state progress from the current world that we live in today. So, you know, business as usual just continues into the future unchanged. Then we have collapsed. This is where society as we know it has come apart. This sounds really bad, and it could be really bad, right? I mean, this could be the collapse of social order. It could be anything, but it doesn't have to be negative. There's no inherent good or bad about these different types of futures. But as you look at the card, if it says collapse, then, you know, there's a big fundamental change has happened and society is kind of broken down on us. Discipline is where there's some kind of order that's intentionally put on the future. It could be through a group, it could be through social kind of pressure, almost it steers things in a particular way. But there's some kind of constraint which is limiting how the future moves forward. And then we have transformation, where a profound historical evolution has occurred and the world is kind of never the same after it. Now, the card isn't going to tell you what, say, caused the transformation or what the transformation was. These are just kind of like big picture possible kind of avenues of change to keep in mind that could be impacting the object or the thing that you're developing. Okay, so growth, things continue as usual. Collapse, society has come apart. Discipline, where there's some kind of constraint. We don't know what that constraint is, but some kind of constraint. Transformation, where something profound has happened, which has fundamentally changed things. And we could argue in a way, we're living through a transformation moment because of the impact of the pandemic and the changes that has created. I mean, that is a huge, significant change for society. So that's one card. There's a lot to explain with that one. The other cards are generally more straightforward. So terrain, this is the context or location where the object would be found. I'll show you an example of that when we see the example cards. Then the object itself, this is the focus of your imagination. You're building an example of the specific object that's on the card that fits into the future, however you see it fitting in. And then the mood suggests how you would feel to experience the thing from the future. Does it make you feel joyful? Does it make you feel anxious? And again, it kind of helps give you a framework within which to think about this thing and what it might be. So those are the standard thing from the future cards. And you'll see this again. I have this same image included in the game, so you'll have a little reminder there. The climate card is the addition that's been made for this climate and sustainability version. So the climate card focuses the thing on a specific climate or sustainability constraint. It could be a sea level change. It could be a particular sector that has an important climate focus. So it could be forests, it could be biodiversity, it could be an extinction, it could be any of a number of things. Actually, we've got a lot of them built into the game. So this just pins down the kind of the climate consideration you want to be thinking about as you think about the thing. So that, I know, is a lot of stuff, right? Let me share with you an example. So here is a set of cards randomly selected through the game earlier on. Actually, I added these just this morning because I keep playing. Whenever I open the thing from the future, I keep going through the different sets of cards and going like, oh, that's an interesting one. Oh, there's this. So here, our arc card is that we're looking at a collapse. Okay, so collapse, society as we know it, something has gone wrong. The fabric has come loose and society isn't working quite the way it does today. We have a time scale here, a decade. So we're thinking about 10 years out. So the relatively near future. And just as a note here, this is a common futures discussion topic. And to keep in mind in your conversations, when we think about the future, there is a big tendency to overestimate short-term changes and underestimate long-term changes. So 10 years from now isn't that long. Now, there could be some pretty significant changes in 10 years, but it's more likely to be somewhat incremental over where we are today, regardless of the scenario type, the archetype. 30 years from now, 50 years from now, things could look fundamentally different. And a good example there is things like the iPhone, the iPad, those kinds of gadgets. 30 years ago, who would have imagined we would all be glued to a smartphone, right? It's how the younger generation communicate pretty much all the time, as near as I can tell, based on the students at the college and my 9-year-old. I mean, imagine what's next 30 years from now for that. So the terrain where the object exists for this future is flight. Now, this could mean anything related to flight, right? It could be the nature of aircraft. It could be travel, vacation travel, for example, via aircraft, anything like that. The object is candy. We'll talk about some options for that here. The mood is decadence, which seemed a very fortuitous card to come out when we're thinking about candy. As the person who has a really, really significant sweet tooth, it's just like, ooh, decadence. And then the climate consideration here is wind energy. So these things all seem really quite different, but we can start to piece these things together. So we're 10 years out. So, okay, take the 10-year mark. So that's, where are we? 2032, approaching Christmas, winter time, around then. And we've got wind energy in flight. So there are, just as an example, we have these kinetic energy recovery systems on vehicles, right, where we use kinetic energy to generate power that's then used to charge the battery to then fuel the vehicle to go further. So while in flight, I wonder if there's something around wind energy that might develop that can generate energy during a flight as a plane is flying through the air. I mean, obviously, there's a big impact with the air while it's flying around. And I don't know, maybe to cut costs and to save, the airlines are harnessing the wind energy that can be generated through flight and using it maybe for some in-flight entertainment to make candy that passengers get to make while they're traveling. Maybe a good entertainment mechanism for little kids, though not if they've had too much sugar, but you know, and then this might be a very decadent experience while you're traveling. You get to make your own chocolate in flight based on the energy being generated by the plane, and have this wonderful decadent travel experience. And so it's, I mean, would that be the object? This little machine that lets you generate chocolate in flight from the wind energy generated by your plane. I don't know if such a thing would ever be developed, but it's an option, it's a possibility, it's something that could come to pass that these cards might lead us to. Now, there are very different things that cards might lead us to, and that's the point of the conversations, right? Me, as somebody who has a sweet tooth, who loves chocolate, of course, I see something like this, and I find a way to make chocolate out of this set of cards. Other people will find different things within this and make different kinds of objects. So that's kind of the goal, just to take these cards, see where your imagination takes you, and then focus on developing an object, a thing of some kind that aligns with this object type that fits across these cards. Does that make sense? You see how that works? I see your hand up. Stuart, go ahead.
Will we be making one object within each group, or does each person make one object?
As a group, make one object. So do this collaboratively, chat among yourselves, see which things you come up with. You may all come up with different ideas, and maybe you'll settle on a couple things. We'll see how it goes in the group. And let's see, so it's 12 participants. I'll put you in 2 groups. What we're going to do for round 1, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. I'll give you a set of cards. It won't be these cards. You have different cards. I'll wait 10 minutes to talk about this, see what you come up with in your groups, and then we'll come back and each group can share their thing from the future. We'll have a little chat about it, and then we'll have a second round, and we'll just play a couple of different rounds. We have until 7:10 for this. So I'll keep an eye on the time and take charge of that to make sure we finish promptly so we can move on with the rest of the planned items. So let me see, do I have anything else in here? Yeah, time to play. So this is a card game in its original form, but you know, the modern world is all technology. So I've made an electronic version of the thing from the future. So let me update the cards. All right, there we go here. Okay, so you can pick any geographic area. You can think about Pima County. You can think about a different area in the world, whatever you like, as you're thinking about your object, your thing. And your cards are these. If you have a pen and piece of paper, feel free to note these down, but I will also send them to you as a broadcast as soon as you're in your breakout room. So you will have these. So your arc is transformation, and your timeline is a century. So you are thinking 100 years from today. And this is a transformation situation. So let me resize this window a little bit, actually, so you can see the full card description if you'd like it. Transformation is when a profound historical evolution has occurred. What that is, you can decide on that, think about that within your groups. There's no limit on what that might be, but be sure to think a century out. Now, the terrain is mining. So this is something in the mining space. It could be related to mining as an industry. It could be related to using a product from mining. So some of the, one of the metals, for example, could relate to coal. And the object or type of object your thing comes from is a bottle that's used somehow in this future world. The mood it generates is outrage. So this is not a warm and fluffy thing you're creating. For users, it makes them, there's a sense of outrage that goes along with this item. And the climate constraint, this is a horrible one that hopefully does not come to pass, but the end of the Amazon rainforest, it's all gone, done. It gets taken out, it is not saved, and it is no longer there. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes. I'm going to put you in random groups. Can I do breakout rooms while I'm still sharing my screen? I believe I can. All right. So we have 2 rooms. Assign you all automatically. I'll set the options for 10 minutes. And the room should auto close in 10 minutes. If they do not, I'll figure out how to break the rooms up and get you all back. I will stay here in the main room. If you have any questions, you should be able to leave your room, come find me, ask, and then I can send you back to your room again. Okay, so if you need input on anything, you can get to me that way. So you have your cards. I'll broadcast them, and you have 10 minutes starting now. I will just know what the right future state is going to be, what the needs is, and it's kind of pulling those ideas. And that's great. I really like the idea of like mining the landfills. It's like, yeah, we should do that, right? There's all this stuff just sat there. Recycle, reuse, put these things to work. That's great. Good job, room number 1. So the pressure's on room number 2. What did you come up with?
Not very exciting, and quite depressing, actually. We determined that the bottle was actually a bottle of oxygen that everybody needed to carry around, because we don't have enough oxygen in the atmosphere because of the destruction of the rainforest, and also with climate change causing the permafrost to melt, it releases all kinds of noxious gases like methane into the atmosphere. So people are going to carry oxygen bottles the way people carried gas masks around in the beginning of World War II. Obviously, the mood is outraged because people aren't really happy about doing that. That's the best that we came up with. I don't know where transformation is. It's a very depressing future to think of. Please chime in.
Oh, we had lots of ideas, but we also considered that, you know, we could mine oxygen from the ocean.
I forgot that. Yes, to use such things as algae farms from the ocean that would not only create food but also create oxygen.
Job, Shirley.
All right, good. So now I'm talking, because I want to say that's great. That's really good. That's a really interesting kind of fit to these cards. Of course, it's not good on the one hand, because that's a really depressing possible future. But sadly, that is a possible future. I mean, if we don't take care of our planet, we could end up in a situation similar to that, right? And hopefully that does not happen. But good work, both groups. Excellent. So
has everybody read Ministry for the Future? Have you read that book?
I have not.
By Kim Stanley Robinson. I certainly urge you to do that.
What was that title again?
Ministry for the Future. Ministry being like a cabinet ministry for the future. The author is Kim Stanley Robinson. It's about close to 700 pages, so prepare yourself.
I'll definitely get a copy. Excellent. And yeah, good. All right. So how was the time? Was 10 minutes about a good amount of time for the discussion, or was it too long? Was it not long enough?
I think it was long enough.
I don't know if
It was hard for us
but
to come to consensus in that amount of time.
Okay. Would you like a little longer for the next round? If we give you 15 minutes, would that be better? What do you think?
Over 15.
The more time we have,
12 minutes.
Wait, someone was saying
Yeah, I missed one of the comments.
the more time we have.
The more time we have, the harder it will be to reach consensus.
True.
True.
It can force things a little bit. So it's like, we've got to make a decision. But I tell you what, let's meet somewhere in the middle. I'll go with 12 minutes for this
That's-
one. Okay, so you have
that's
just
what
a
I said.
tiny little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yes, it was mentioned. All right, good. So let me share my screen again and let's get our next set of cards. Share screen. I need this
Hey,
one.
Nick,
Yes.
could I propose a little device that I use sometimes
Mhm.
from improv, which is yes and when you're making decisions, or as a group, when someone comes up with the idea, you can add to the idea as a way of collectively coming to a thing rather than proposing an alternative to it, which can be kind of paralyzing to a group.
Great suggestion.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. All right. Do you see my screen, everybody?
Those are the same cards.
They are. I haven't selected the new ones yet. So let's see. Let's hope we get a good set, not a weird one. Okay. Oof. Okay. So discipline, a decade. So discipline is a future where there's some kind of deliberate coordination that's like imposed on the future, whatever that may be. We don't know, but there's some kind of coordinating factor going on. The terrain is genetics. So you're thinking about an object that relates to genetics in one way, shape, or form. The object is a lotion. What that lotion does, what it's for, that's for you to all think about and discuss in your groups. And the mood that this object generates is curiosity. So it will inspire curiosity in the people who use this or see this. And the climate context around this is US growth in sustainable industries. So the intent behind this one is that the US moves to position itself as a leader in sustainable industries. So that's whatever you interpret that to mean. Of course, it could mean a whole lot of things, but that's up to you to all think about. So those are your cards. As before, I'll put them in the broadcast as soon as I've got you in the room, so you have the record of it that way as well. And you'll have 12 minutes, assuming I remember to change the timing for breakout rooms. And I'll leave you in the same groups as before. So you have 12 minutes, and then there'll be a 30-second countdown for when you get politely returned to the main room. So have fun, have good conversations. Again, I'll be here if you have questions. You can leave the room and come back here and I'll answer any questions. And beyond that, have fun. See you in 12 minutes.
Okay.
Apparently, I have to put myself in a group as well. Okay, I'll do that.
All right, I'll see you soon.
You remember that old movie, Vanishing Point?
I don't remember that movie.
Started.
But that's a good idea and well
Yeah,
taken.
if we could have got rid of one card and drawn another card, we
Like poker?
we might have won.
I'll experiment with how to get the game to work that way so people can choose it that way. That's is a really good idea. So welcome back. I hope you all had good conversations about our latest set of cards. So this time we'll hear from room number 2 first. So room 2, who is your spokesperson?
Okay, I am, but my dog is feeling frisky and he won't leave me alone. So if you guys can hear me, 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to try to get this out real quick and then maybe another team member can jump in if necessary. So we came up with an idea that that governments would hold companies like Monsanto responsible and accountable for the damage they've done in the world. And so in the next 10 years, they are required to develop a lotion that offsets the damage done through the GMO products and the pesticides and herbicides that they've put out into the world. This lotion can act in several ways. It can act as a medium within which to carry seeds. And it also helps inoculate and feed the seeds. It also provides a way to easily plant seeds. And it breaks down in the soil and helps regenerate the soil. And all of this allows for growth, because we can grow food in terrible soils that have been created by companies like Monsanto and others, and different climate conditions. And yeah, I think that's about it.
That's great. Very good. Would anybody from group 2 like to add anything to that? Room 2? It was a great summary.
Absolutely. The only other thing I can think of is we were trying to incorporate discipline. And then originally we thought about something like, the government disciplines and make it, but in 10 years, we didn't think the government could get anything done, especially in our climate now. So actually that Monsanto is going to self-discipline, so it's all happy.
What a lovely future. I would love to see that.
I love the idea of using terrain that possibly has been unwelcoming to any kind of agriculture, so that things that, like perhaps a desert area or something like that, that would not have been suitable for agriculture.
My response to all that is I would be curious as to how we get there.
Make
All right.
it profitable.
It would be
That is it.
profitable. It would be all the food on the earth.
Yeah.
All right, good. Very good. Room number 2. Room 1. What did you come up with?
Hi, we came up with almost the same thing, just different words. We said that because of our sustainable futures, we need to have an algae superfood lotion that feeds not only humans, nature and animals, the soil, of course. So everything starts regenerating and restoring, and habitat restoration,
Nice.
which Sustainable Tucson's all about. And we are witnessing a rebirth, a greening of the earth, because we all had a spiritual awakening that we are all one. And what we do to each other, we do to ourselves. So we must have peace, beauty, harmony, and goodness and truth. Thank you.
Love it.
I like that one a lot. That's great. Good.
I like that.
Good. These are great objects. Good work. Good discussions, everybody. So I would love to be able to send you off with another set of cards, but we're very slightly over time for this item. So it's time for us to move along. But I want to wrap up by thanking all of you for participating in the conversations. I hope you've had fun. I've certainly enjoyed hearing the items and the ideas that you've come up with. If you'd like to engage with Pima as we move forward on actually either the futures work or the climate work that we're doing, I'll drop my email address in the chat so you can reach out to me. I encourage you to if you would like to. I'll also put the link to the college's climate action and sustainability plan in the chat so you have access to that as well. And Stuart, now you're on the line. I gave you a shout out earlier, but I'll give you another one now for working with the college on the planning work we did. Thank you for your involvement in that. And with that, happy holidays. Thank you for letting me come join you today. And Stuart, I think back to you, right?
Thank you, Nick. And I wish that I could have introduced you, because I wanted to talk about all the good work that you've done. And I would highlight that you were the person who catalyzed the formation of the Climate Action and Sustainability Plan. And one of the features that I appreciated very much about it was the diverse population that was involved in the making of that plan. There were people from student body, from the staff, from administration, from faculty, both part-time and full-time faculty, all had a seat at the table, and they broke into at least a couple of different committees I came in just at the end to look things over a bit and just offer a few ideas. The work had really been done. And what impressed me the most is how much fun it was to read the plan. It was it's about 21 pages long. It's really clear and it's really straightforward. And so there are a lot of details that are left up to the bodies that are responsible to make it happen. But there's something from my conversations with a couple of the several people who are on committees and with Nic, this feels like a plan that's going to have feet and hands and really get done. So hats off to Pima for doing this. And if you are interested, I think you would not be disappointed in allowing yourself to help out with their implementation. So with all that said, we just got a few minutes and I'm curious, just your reflections on the experience. First, just what did you notice about this experience of getting these somewhat disparate inputs, sometimes challenging, trying to imagine an object that would fulfill the challenge?
Is the thing from the future, is you said that's an online game? Is it something that we could share, that we could access online?
Yeah, I'll drop the link into the Situation Lab. That's where
Okay.
it's available for download.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else that caught your eye or your imagination?
So you use this technique at Pima? Because to me, it's like it took us far away from the reality of what's going on in the desert. So I was wondering how you relate, if you're working on our desert, how you related it to this game.
That's a good question. So for Pima's use of this, we haven't yet played the climate version as a college. The one we've been working on is when we were developing our strategic plan that went into effect about 18 months ago now. We played the education version of this, which kind of is, again, you're building kind of artifacts from the future. But the theme there, rather than being climate-based, is about different aspects of education. It includes things like the declining perceived value of an education, which is one of the challenges we're trying to wrestle with in higher ed. Things like increasing competition from platforms like Coursera, the growth of online education, those kinds of things. So we weren't focused on the climate piece there. That was like institution-wide, thinking about the future of higher education in general. But yeah, when we move this forward and talk about Tucson, we'll kind of fine-tune some of the options that can come out in terms of the climate kind of impacts. There's a number of different settings where I anticipate this being used. Some of them are more general. This is the big picture climate version, but there'll be others where we fine tune it to specifically the local challenges. Though some of the cards in there are specifically local, they're just not the ones that came up while we were playing today.
So you're saying that you actually have used this game to develop some sort of seeds of thought for future planning for Pima?
Yeah. When we engaged in our last strategic planning process, we kind of shelved the traditional planning. We did the traditional stuff. Those of you got experience with that, like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, competitor analysis, kind of standard higher ed planning steps. But we spent probably about 6 months worth of meetings, which isn't as much as it sounds because we don't meet that frequently, but working on the futures aspect. So that included playing this game. It also included a discussion around signals and drivers, which are some of they're kind of like very central futurist methods. Signals, for example, when you try and think about the future, one way to do that is try and look for little small innovative things that are happening today. And it might be, in the case of higher education, one community college somewhere, not necessarily even in the US, that's got this little innovative practice. And it's just like, you know, that really has potential. And then thinking through, it's like, well, that's what it looks like now. What could that be 5, 10, 20 years down the road? And using that to start trying to think about the future. And there's probably, it's about 25, 30 different methods we embed through the process. And so the thing from the future is one aspect of that, but there's this big suite of tools we ultimately use to try and draw this vision of Pima. At that point in time, thinking about 2030, now we need to think longer term than that, but that worked for us 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, that's very interesting. I've got another question, but Jan, did you have something?
No.
Okay.
No, thanks.
I'm wondering, so is there anything you could name as an example of something, Nic, that came out of one of these games that you've taken a little bit down the road with the college? Oops, got muted.
That's a good question. So what we did through the futures work in the strategic plan, we identified a number of areas that we needed to prioritize. So things that were commonalities that kept emerging through the different future scenarios we were developing. And one of the things that stood out was a need for personalization and the personal touch in education, because we realized as we were looking through and thinking how technology may play out, how competition in education could play out, it all moved us in the direction of very impersonal transactions. Working with Coursera, it's all online, right? I mean, I'm sure you can get a person, but you're mostly just working on a computer. With technology, the growth of different kinds of academic delivery methods or embedding artificial intelligence in education, it again makes it a very impersonal experience. Mm-hmm. And we recognize that our role as a community college is we're here to serve this community. Now we have students who are from outside of Pima County, and that's great, but most of our students are local. That's our purpose, to meet the needs of this community. And how can we embed personalization and the needs of the community in a more thoughtful way as we engage in planning and implement the strategies? One of the things that stood out to us as a priority for the next 4 years, it's going to conclude 18 months from now, is that we have probably about 25% of Pima County residents who have some college and no degree. This is a bit of a soapbox of mine at the college, because people come to Pima, they take a couple classes and that's all great, but then they don't complete like a certificate or a degree, or maybe they transfer to the university before they complete a certificate or degree with us. And in a way, that's fine. People need to get out of education what it is they're looking for, but we know based on data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that the higher your education level, the higher your cumulative lifetime earnings, and the lower your likelihood of unemployment. And so we, looking at the community, thinking about where the future trends seem to be taking us, we committed to an initiative to engage more effectively with adult learners in the community. So those people 25 to 65 who have some degree, have some college, no degree, because we can really significantly impact their lives. We can help them get a job that will pay more money, that will help bring financial stability to them and their family. And it's really hard to engage with adult learners. Those people just leaving high school, they're really easy. You've got a captive audience because you can contact them via the high schools. But we recognize that there is a value to the community there. The demographics of the aging workforce is a key factor there as well. And we have like 25% of our residents who fall in this category. And it's like, we can do something. And it seemed like a very important way to us that we could work towards the future we want to see and do that in a way that helps support our purpose, which in our mission framework is transforming lives through affordable education. And so we had that front and center as we worked on it.
Those are nice words.
Mm-hmm. When I hear that, it makes me concerned. My son is going to Pima right now, and So for those people who are younger, that around Tucson, at every group, usually Sustainable Tucson, we got a little bit of younger crowd here tonight, but you know, everything is older people, and I really would hate for you guys to push out the younger, you know, students who maybe can't afford to go to the U of A, or who are still searching for what they want to do, like my son.
Yeah, well, please don't. We identified a strategy to engage more effectively with older learners, but that's not at the expense of younger students. So our biggest age range is students between 18 and 24. And that actually increased for the most recent fall. So it's not that we want to not focus on younger students, and we want to focus on older people within the community. We want to do both, right? We don't want to lose the pathway of younger students coming into the institution, because we are much more affordable, and arguably our processes are a little less complicated than the university. We're hopefully a little less intimidating for students from certain backgrounds who may not have parents who've been in education, for example, higher education. And so it's not focusing on adult learners at the expense of all the other students. It's just getting more effective at engaging with those with adult learners while maintaining the channels we have, the connections to high school. We've built out dual enrollment, for example, so more students can earn Pima credits at high school than they could a couple of years ago. It's really important. It saves the students money. They can get college credit at school and be that further forward when they start at the community college or the university.
Yes, yes, yes.
We're trying to build pathways out across the board, but we recognize it's a weak area for us with working adults. So that's an area of focus.
Wow. Well, thank you. Go ahead, someone. Okay, whoever it was, maybe they've disappeared. So speak up if you have anything more. So Nic, we're closing in on 7:30, so I would like to formally thank you for sharing this very intriguing and for me, a fun activity, just playing with our imaginations with some challenging prompts. And perhaps we will talk amongst ourselves about ways we might use this for thinking specifically about our sustainability issues. And I will remind everybody that the Sustainable Tucson Ambassadors is in its 4th generation now. We'll be having our next offering starting on the first Saturday of June. And Jana is the person who had the idea of having the ambassadors, and I always like to acknowledge that. And Jan attended the last session that we had of training. Dwayne has spoken, Trace has spoken at the ambassadors, and Robin, who's not here any longer, went through the ambassadors training as well. So we encourage all of you to look into that. It's a lot of fun on Saturday mornings. We work on interesting content issues and also some ambassadorial skills like speaking and listening. And even we have a session on emotional regulation for creative collaboration, a fun topic to work on with a recent graduate of the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine program on wellness coaching. So that's, we try to bring in a lot of good resources for everybody.
I'll just say it was outstanding, and I'm going to take it again.
All right.
Because it was that great. I mean, it really was. I recommend it. Highly recommend it.
Thank you, Jan. And again, thank you, Nic. I hope we all look at the Climate Action and Sustainability Plan, at least by this Sunday. And I think it's inspiring reading. If you like plans, even just a tiny bit, you'll like this one. And next week, or rather next month, we have Traylon Heckman, who is the founder of Daily Acts, a Petaluma grassroots organization that took a big role when the Santa Rosa fires occurred a couple of years ago. And he's written a book called Take Heart, Take Action. So we thought that would be a fun way to start the new year.